we will also have a bunch of people in the audience, and the audience is part of the incident response team, and you help us vote, you help us decide what to do. So stay locked in and engaged, and we are going to drop a link in that everybody can use to join for voting. So we'll post that a couple of times, but that's what we use to actually vote and see the results in the exercise. Yeah, blow up the chat, drop where you're from, how you're doing, what's on your mind, and definitely contribute via the chat during the exercise as well. We'll try to call out anything that people drop in there that looks helpful or interesting. So these exercises, they're meant to be fun. They're for learning. There's not a ton of great resources on how to run a tabletop exercise, what can be covered, what tools are available to help with it. So that's why we put these exercises on. If you find it interesting, useful, share a friend, come back again next month, and we'll see you there. One quick note before I turn it over to Mike, who's our facilitator. We have 3 of our 4 players here, but we're missing one. So if anybody would like to play our SOC analyst today, please raise your hand and I will try to make you a panelist. We need one. So with that, I will turn it over to Mike, and whoever raises their hand first, I'm just going to promote you.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Well, hello, everybody. I'll also keep an eye on the live chat as well throughout the exercise, and also just in case anybody offers up to join as the SOC analyst as well. So quick introduction from me, and then what we'll do is we'll get into a quick roll call as well. We go over the players on the panel, and hopefully by then we'll also have a SOC analyst joining us. I promise you, it is a really interesting role in this particular scenario as well. We do actually have somebody, Rob, who's offered up. So I'll let you do the promotion.
Where is that?
Just
Oh,
in the
Michaela.
chat. Yeah.
Michaela, I see you.
Hey. All right
I'm
then.
doing it.
I'll do a quick intro then. So yeah, I'm Mike. Hello everybody. You'll notice some goats in the background despite the surname being Lamb. Cribble is goat mad. So that really introduces Cribble. That's who I work for. I'm a senior SecOps engineer here. I've been with Cribble for about 6 months, but I've spent maybe the last 6, 7 years in the industry building SOC teams, building out a bit of an incident response capability in various organizations. I've shared some successes and some trials and tribulations. Some of those that people would be familiar with is actually getting a member of an APT group. I'm not going to name them on the on the call, but a member of the group indicted, and then they were arrested and actually pled guilty, which was good fun. But I've also had all sorts of different trials and tribulations along the way over the years. Working in NATO, working in UK government, working in SOC teams, incident response, and then for the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years, has actually been in security leadership. So I'm actually a SANS instructor as well outside of Cribble. So I'm very privileged to travel around the world and also deliver virtual sessions like this as well to teach people how to build and lead SOCs. So that's the LDR 551 course as well. So yeah, I'm going to turn it over to a quick roll call. I'll probably turn to Jerry first, and if you want to kind of pass the baton around, Jerry.
Sure. Hey, Jerry Johansson. I'm going to be playing our CISO. So basically, I'm the one that's going to get blamed and fired after this. But basically, no, I've been in a while. You probably see me on a few of these TTX Thursdays. So I'll pass it off to, I think, Jeff is the next one.
Hello, I'm Jeff. Nice to meet you. Yeah, I'll be playing Mr. DevOps today. And my real background is I work at Arctic Wolf. I'm a concierge security consultant guy, telling people how to keep their environment secure. So you hopefully I'll actually have some decent advice, maybe possibly, hopefully. Yeah, happy to be here.
I guess it'll be handed off to me. I'm Dan Weiss. I'm a founder and principal at 865 Cybersecurity, boutique pen testing and advisement firm, and we run tabletops of our own as well. And I'm going to be playing the vendor supply chain liaison, which means I'm responsible for making sure all those contracts we have and suppliers we have are doing what they need to do and figuring out who's responsible for what happens and what needs to happen. Mike?
Very good. That leaves Michaela, who's now joined us. So welcome, Michaela.
Yay.
Hello, thank you. I think, I don't know. I'm going to be going back in time and trying to do some hands-on stuff as a SOC analyst. I'm going to be the first to detect and investigate anomalies. I'm apparently driven to trace attacker behavior and gather evidence, but I may push for deeper analysis over immediate action. My tagline is, one more log should prove it.
Very good.
All right then. Thanks for joining us as well, Michaela. Last minute join there as well. All right then. So I'll just quickly introduce the situation background and just set the scene. Like, what situation are we actually in? And most importantly, what has Michaela just signed up for as well? So the organization at hand is called SalesSoft. So we are basically a publicly traded SaaS powerhouse, okay? So we operate mainly in the tech sector. We'll have our own customers. We'll have partners. We'll also trade with organizations as well who will supply us with all sorts of different things as well. So we've got data coming in and out of this organization in all sorts of different directions. And as you can see here in the situation background, with great connectivity, however, comes great exposure as well. And that's going to be a common theme throughout this, this organization, but more importantly, the breach itself as well. We went through years of rapid growth. Okay, so we've had temporary solutions stood up. We've pushed things into prod maybe without very much testing. And we don't actually really know, how all of this hangs together. We've got all sorts of different integrations. We've got tokens and secrets stored in places that they probably shouldn't be. And we've got some questionable practices happening as well to try and get us through this rapid period of growth as well. So as you see, joining us, that's introduced themselves there as the panel. So we've got a CISO, we've got our cloud or DevOps engineer as well. We've got a SOC analyst, and then finally, we've got our vendor and supply chain liaison as well. So quite a varied panel here. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and solve this incident, hopefully. There isn't a right or a wrong answer. There'll be anonymous voting through as well. And I'll probably let Rob introduce that and how the mechanics of that work shortly as well. But you'll see with the varied panel, we'll hopefully have some really interesting discussions. Myself, Rob, and others will keep an eye on the live chat as well, just in case there's anybody wants to offer up any points or anything to discuss as well. I'll also keep an eye on that as well. But yeah, let's get straight into it.
If anybody, before Mike goes into it, if anybody is having any issues with the link, I dropped it in the chat. Please click that link, join it. That will show you what I have shared on my screen here, but also it'll help. You'll be able to go back and look at other things during the exercise, as well as we do have voting during the exercise. That's how we are going to make decisions as a incident response team here. So please join. We want to get as many people voting as possible and engaging with the exercise. So back over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so where we're going to start with this situation, okay? SalesLoft is the organization that we work in. And we're starting to experience an incident, okay? So our cloud DevOps engineer, Dan, I believe, or Jeff, sorry, has reached out to our SOC analyst, Michaela, and actually mentioned that we've got a 10x increase in Salesforce QL query volume over the past 4 hours. So what that basically means is somebody is querying the data in our CRM, our sales system, at a volume that we wouldn't normally expect. Obviously, we've got a lot of vigilance there from our cloud and DevOps team to have actually picked that up as well. And most importantly, we do have some context. This is all being attributed to an OAuth service account called Drift. Now, for context, the actual scenario that we're exercising here is a scenario that was, real or reality not too long ago, which concerned an integration called Drift or SalesLoft, as you would have heard about. That organization gets compromised. They had OAuth consent grants, which are basically connections with a scope of permissions into each organization that they supply the Drift integration to. And that Drift integration connects via OAuth into Salesforce instances in the customer organizations. And what that allows the customer organization to do is to offer support services, use AI, almost offer a chatbot as well. And it can access all of the underlying Salesforce information as well. So you can imagine consent grant and what the permission scope might look like. It's going to be quite broad and probably considered quite high risk as well. So that's just something to consider there as well. But we'll just dive a little bit deeper into this as well. So you'll see as well with the increase in volume, we've had all sorts of different information queried. So cases, accounts, potentially messages are being queried, opportunities that are being logged by the sales team as well. Let's maybe start to think about what the sales team might throw in Salesforce beyond the benign stuff as well. Maybe a hint. And then finally as well, just some more context. As we've started to investigate this a little bit further, the logs actually show that the requests are going to be coming from Tor exit nodes, so anonymous dark web IP addresses effectively. And also, when we look at our own hygiene internally, that Drift integration was approved 18 months ago with all of these broad read permissions. Nobody's ever rotated this integration before, or the credentials associated with it. So all sorts of different areas of concern to think about. So I'll turn it over to the next section here. Here's just some log files to have a look at as well, and then we'll get into the voting. So we'll see here, this all started there, Thursday 9 a.m. We've got the service account drift OAuth token prod, and we can see the actual queries that the actor has actually put into there, the source IP address being a Tor exit node as well. So very suspicious things are happening already across the estate, with potentially some sensitive information being accessed as well. All right. I'm just going to turn it over to the voting, but the exam question to start off with here is, should the team, our CISO, cloud DevOps engineer, our SOC analyst, vendor liaison, should the team immediately revoke the Drift OAuth token to stop the attacker's access? Or are we going to preserve that temporarily to gather any more forensics evidence and coordinate with Drift, who is the supplier of this integration as well? So a few things to consider. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the voting. I'll probably turn over to Rob as well, who can explain the mechanics of the voting as well. Obviously, that's anonymous, and there's a few things that Rob will take you through as well. And I'll keep an eye on the chat if there's any issues. I've also got a potential few points of provocation as well to drop in if the panel or the team are stuck, or we need to drive the discussion in an interesting direction as well.
So as you look at voting, first of all, let us know if you are having trouble joining the link or any issues joining the voting. Second thing, feel free to drop stuff in the chat if there's additional questions or context you would want to have when making this type of decision. Answers, do them in the vote, and then we're going to discuss. And then there's not just the vote, but also choose your confidence level, because that's an important thing to understand when a team's making a decision. Is not just what the vote is, but how confident are you in the vote, and where does the confidence lie amongst those votes.
All right. What I'll do is I'll actually read out the options for those who are following along, and also just for the panel to have a think about as well, and as people finish up voting. So the first option is we could revoke the Drift OAuth token altogether and halt any unauthorized API queries and prevent any further data exfiltration. That's going to be option one. So that looks like a full containment there. Option two is we could actually just reduce the scope of the Drift OAuth token as well. So rather than just totally halt it, could we just reduce the scope and what it could actually do? And only do that for 30 minutes. Then we'll contact Drift security team to confirm a compromise. Option three, well, let's just do nothing. Let's take no immediate action on that token. And instead, we'll turn to Jerry, our CISO, for a full forensics review before making any containment decisions as well. So I'll give people maybe a minute or two, Rob, and then we'll close up voting and also turn across to the panel for discussion. Looks like we've almost got all the votes in as well now, so I'll just close that in a sec. Okay. So some interesting kind of lean towards an option A there to entirely revoke that token as well, and we'll come back to that point shortly. We did have roughly 39% there, so 9 votes actually opted just to reduce the OAuth token as well. And then finally, we did have a vote to also escalate this to the CISO to maybe do a full forensics review as well before any containment decisions. I'm just going to turn immediately to our CISO, Jerry, to start driving the discussion if you want, Jerry, and let me know what your thoughts are here. We're in quite an interesting
So
situation.
yeah, let's kind of talk about, this is coming to me. The first thing I'm going to want to know is what's the immediate impact right now. And it sounds like, from what DevOps is telling me, is we are seeing these queries. They're essentially using that token, or that token, and we're exfilling data. So my immediate is, we have enough. I think we have got a preponderance of the evidence to go ahead and do option A, which is that immediate revocation and stop this. My thought process is, with an active data exfil, and this is the most immediate way to contain that. That's the direction we're going to go.
I like it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can reach out to Drift, they probably should have let us know something bad was going on there, and they may have better capacities than we've got. So,
Sure.
I got a great relationship with them that they should be helpful on this.
So, and this gets to a really interesting point that I would say is, with that, is to say, we may be experiencing that drift account. We may be saying, we're going to just disable this for 60 minutes until we hear it, because Dan's got that relationship. Let's reach out to them, see what's going on, and tell them right now, we're just going to need to suspend this for 30 or 60 minutes to get some, to at least get the situation under control. We can take a breath and then figure out what's happening.
So,
Interesting.
SOC analyst here, and I actually went with a different option. I went with B in terms of reducing scope, and on the basis that immediately I'm thinking, okay, change logs. I'd be checking the change logs. Is there actually perhaps a particular activity that was going to necessitate them having all those records to do I don't know what? And I would like to think that the internal DevOps role would be aware if there were some sort of change happening. So yeah, checking the change log. I would, if the case was there's nothing on that, then I would be coming back and escalating and saying, actually, yeah, there's no known reason as to why the state would be going out. So yeah, let's lock it down. But I wouldn't leap to it as the first thing, because we don't know. We're assuming it's malicious. We don't know that it is.
I would just offer that if we've identified the traffic as coming from Tor nodes, then there may be a way for us to restrict the IPs that are connecting to conduct this suspicious traffic. So when we're talking about scope can mean different things. So we could also be talking about limiting access to known good IPs or known historically good geolocations or whatever. When we talk about scope, I think typically we tend to go towards permissions, but I would certainly, I think, break things and have unintended consequences. If I wasn't going to revoke the session entirely and the token, instead I would go straight to the blocking the IPs that we see traffic from. And if we know they're coming from Tor, those are relatively easier to identify. So it should be a fairly quick, relatively speaking, action to take.
And if we keep the flow going, we may have a better chance of actual attribution at some point, particularly if we can involve drift.
Yeah. I mean, I would also offer that my feeling as a DevOps engineer, there should already be enough data in the logs to determine attribution, when it started, how they got in. I mean, I can't, until you actually do the analysis, you can't guarantee anything. But yeah, I'll just put it out there like that. I think there's probably enough information in the logs already. I would go for the shutting down the IPs if possible. And if for some reason that's not working and we still see anomalous traffic, then I would cut the OAuth session entirely.
Yeah. No, I like that, Jeff. It's a very creative kind of approach to reducing the scope, as you say. And as you mentioned as well, do we get unintended consequences by trying to reduce the scope? Is it even possible? And that's one of the discussion points that I'd like to maybe put out there as well, is it comes back to awareness of what the art of the possible is with containment, especially in the SaaS space. When we say reducing the scope, that might mean we have to rotate the session anyways. We have to rotate the whole auth token and replace it. That's going to cause a whole boatload of impacts. Could we reduce the scope at the network level then, as you suggest? One of the other things to maybe turn the discussion over to and kind of play towards the majority of where the votes went, which is to, and most people's natural reaction is always to do this, is to go for that immediate containment, is that full revocation of that token. How do we actually revoke that token? You know, do we have the right privileges in Salesforce to go in and do that, or is the resource, let's say, asleep right now? Do we have an on-call resource? There's all sorts of different considerations there as well, right?
The big one that I often run into is, do we even know how? Is there documentation how to do it? Like, where's the portal to get to that account, right?
Yeah. Lots of concerns in there from the containment space, especially as far as SaaS is concerned, and then you add in the complexity of an auth integration as well. That's been kind of almost backdoored, you know, via, well, no change process really. It's been in there for 18 months as well. Just going to turn over to the chat as well. So we've got some interesting points popping in. So Eddie first dropped in, said the data or logging pipeline knowledge is critical here. Can we actually verify that we have lots of forensics already, or do we need additional evidence? So Eddie's very much the same opinion there as Michaela in the panel of, do we actually need some more logs first to verify this as well? Dylan, really good point. We also may not know as well if Drift themselves or itself has been compromised, or if it's just on our side as well. So again, the context as to the perspective of this breach is really interesting. Are we collateral damage at this stage? Do we have enough information? Or have we almost been part of the root cause here as well? So some really good points dropping into the chat there. All right then. Rob, any points before we move on to the next injects?
Let's keep moving.
Then we shall. Okay, so we're going to turn the dial up just a little bit on this scenario now. We're going to turn up the heat. We're going to add some more context to the breach itself. And we should get some quite interesting discussions out of this one as well. And again, I've got some quite provoking points on how to steer this one. But let's just say, 26 rough minutes have passed now. And we've got some alerts coming in from AWS Guard Duty. We've maybe got some SIM alerts as well coming from our CloudTrail logs as well to suggest that we've got some unauthorized API calls that are hitting our AWS space. And they're actually using credentials that we know to have been stored as encrypted text in Salesforce custom fields. Now, again, don't know who's done that. Maybe Jeff, as the DevOps cloud engineer of the team in SalesSoft, could add some context as to why we've stored some prod credentials for cloud in Salesforce custom fields. But interestingly, the attacker's been using that to then perform lateral movements. They've extracted multiple AWS IAM access keys and some Snowflake service account tokens from there. And then it gets worse. So at this stage, we now start to see the S3 buckets as well. We've got downloads of customer data files coming out of the S3 buckets. So at this point, we pretty much know there's some form of compromise definitely taking place. And Drift have actually confirmed as well with our vendor and supply chain liaison that there is a breach and their infrastructure was compromised as well. And they're actually going to take their own containment steps themselves to revoke all customer tokens that were issued before August 1st, 2025. So ours at SalesSoft would actually be in scope of that change. And that's going to start to cause some disruption. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to turn to the voting. But I'm going to leave you in the panel and also in the Zoom chat as well for the audience. I'm going to leave you with maybe this final thought as well, is the actions that we take now are very time-bound and time-sensitive. Okay, Drift are going to start to take their own containment actions. We're now up against that timeline as well. That's going to cause a customer-facing disruption to an extent. It's going to cause us some impacts. We need to start to think about recovery, saving face, what do our comms look like, and all sorts of other things. So let me turn it across to the Slack chat and then we'll get into the voting. So you'll see Jeff, our cloud DevOps engineer, was straight into the virtual war room there and mentioned that we've had the guard duty alerts there that's flagged the multiple unauthorized API calls. Michaela, our SOC analyst, then messaged as well and actually did some really good analysis there and found that the CloudTrail logs do show that the actor actually assumed an IAM role and they accessed an S3 bucket called customer data staging. So this is really not a good day. And just to make it worse, 3 files total 2.5 gigabytes. So again, is that going to impact all customers? Only a few. And then finally as well, we then get into some concern where Jerry, our CISO, has dropped into the Slack channel. Maybe he's hopped out of the hammock and started to check, hang on, what's going on here? And actually mentioned that the CFO and Chief Legal Officer are actually asking for a call in 15 minutes. They need to know as well if we need to disclose this to customers and whether or not that's going to impact our filing with the SEC as a publicly traded entity. We also have other concerns around, do we have customers in other jurisdictions where we're bound by different regulations there as well? And then finally, we've got that 72-hour notification timeline starting to kick in, so we really need to get some clarity. Okay,
so can I just ask a question?
Yes.
I may have missed it on the prior inject.
Yeah.
What functionality is this actually affecting for the business in terms of what impact are we going to see?
Is that for our business, Michaela?
Yeah.
So in terms of impacts, we might at this stage, obviously we've lost customer data, or that appears to have what's happened there. And what we're now going to start to see is as Drift start to revoke the tokens, ours being in scope, we might lose that integration into Salesforce. So if we have business processes, especially sales and commercial processes that are reliant on that integration in Salesforce, that's going to have a knock-on impact potentially on RevOps, revenue, and ability to maybe close new business as well, or even service existing customers as well.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, though. Yeah. All right. So the exam question for this one is, should the company, SalesSoft, immediately notify affected customers of their potential data exposure? Or do we delay that notification pending a complete forensic investigation review and a legal review as well? So there's all sorts of different things to consider there that I dropped in as potential hints. But I'll just start the voting there and you can see some of the options. As you can see, first option is to issue a proactive customer notification within 24 hours, disclosing the OAuth breach, the scope of the exfiltrated data, and remediation steps, and also file a preliminary breach report with our regulators. Option 2, could we conduct a 72-hour forensic investigation to quantify the breach of the scope and then notify customers? So maybe use up some of that 72-hour window to actually firm up some of the information. And then finally, do we engage the external counsel and a forensics firm externally before any customer notification as well? Delay that disclosure until a legal review is complete and regulatory guidance is obtained. So again, I'll turn over to the panel and see if anybody has any thoughts about where we want to take this discussion.
I think I'll be up front. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll say from a CISO perspective, a lot of this is, I can have my own belief structure, but a lot of this is going to come down from the legal and providing them the best information. And this is where I would kind of sit as the broker and say, go to DevOps and security ops and say, what are we really looking at here from an impact perspective? Can we confirm what's your level of confidence, whether or not customer data, and I mean customer confidential data has been exfilled, and then kind of report that up to legal. I would be hesitant initially to start pulling triggers in terms of notifying customers without at least a good sense of what actually happened and having some sort of back end. It also helps, bringing in potentially somebody else to come in and help from a forensics perspective. It gives us a little bit of distance. And the other call that I'm making, somebody dropped it in the chat. I didn't see the name, but what's our cyber insurance and liability policies, and what can we leverage from there? Because there may be some PR people that are part of that can help us craft up some messages and give us some guidance there.
Hang on. I'm gonna just some thoughts from me, Mr. DevOps. The first 24 hour, the first initial tackling of this issue is just full of chaos.
Mhm.
For me, it is very tempting, and my initial instinct is the 24-hour notification, but I also have a feeling we're going to get it wrong if we do that.
Yep.
We might notice notify a lot of the wrong people, or leave some out just because we don't know the scope yet. My more cautious nature that I've acquired through years of DevOpping is the 72 hours. However, I do have the question of regulatory compliance, right?
Mhm.
Because and the thing is that I don't know if you have customers in Europe, but we also have customers in the US, customers in those guidelines are different, and we need to be mindful of that. We may have to do reporting at different
Intervals, yeah.
staggered time intervals. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So
I'm not the technical guy here. I'm the sales and relationship guy. But in terms of relationship, it sounds like we already have enough data that we know that it's not our fault, not our responsibility. And if we're upfront with at least the beginnings and say, hey, we're part of a larger breach from a vendor, we don't know the full
Mhm.
scope, and let people know, that'll do us goodwill and help our brand in the future. And doesn't necessarily let anybody know something we don't already know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I
Yeah.
think there's
Dan,
kind of
is there maybe anything in your role as the vendor liaison that you might want to do at this stage to assist the rest of the team?
I'd probably get some language from Drift and see what they're disclosing, when they're disclosing it, and what they're including in the disclosure, and possibly also
Mhm.
reach out to some of the other downstream vendors and see, particularly Salesforce, and see if they're hearing about this from any other clients who use Drift to access Salesforce, same way we do, to give us some guidance, and maybe we can put out joint statements together and defer some of the responsibilities or some of the worst brunt of it.
I like it. Yeah, that's really good. There's actually some really good points as well coming through the live chat as well.
Mhm.
And just checking there. So Dylan had mentioned, which I think Jerry had pointed out, do we have cyber insurance? Do we have any kind of risk retainer or any insurance pool that we can lean upon? Not just from a technical standpoint to use that as a card, but we might be able to offset some of the liability onto maybe an external provider to help and assist with that. And most importantly as well, commercially speaking, if we've already got these agreements in place, obviously this might be a bit of a cost exercise here. We've got not just cost in terms of monetary terms, but we've got resource. So we've got Jeff, we've got Jerry, Dan, Kayla, etc. We've got that amazing panel of team there to handle the incident. But we might just want to offset that. So again, Michaela, our SOC analyst, can actually go to sleep. So we might want to use that as an option. As we'll see here as well, Eddie dropped something in the chat as well. So Eddie mentioned, I haven't heard anything about external data reporting yet, i.e. leaks
Yep.
to dark web or any
Mhm.
news reports. And he actually mentioned as well that there should already at this stage be some kind of pre-stage language and verbiage that can be relied upon. So maybe a holding statement, if I've read that right, Eddie, as well. But scoping it to make sure that we aren't notifying people who aren't affected as critical as that impacts brand visibility. So really good point there from Eddie as well. Let me just close the voting, and I'll leave that on the screen for a sec just whilst I check the charts. So again, something there from Dylan. So another thing to consider for those looking at proactive notification or broad notification, maybe vendor letters of attestation or remediation, vendor dependencies may be cut off if we over notify too as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's definitely a concern. Do we create our own upstream impact on ourselves if we notify and then get cut off by our own supply chain or our own customers? That again is something that we lose control of and we move further down that hill. Again, something that I always like to talk about, not just in incident response, but tabletops like this, and it might resonate with the panel here, is we talk about trying to regain control in a relatively panicked situation. And that's what we're trying to do here is regain that control. So if we get cut off, we don't know how long we're cut off for. We might not know what impact that's going to cause. So we're just losing control.
Mhm.
All right, then. So in terms of the decisions, a little bit more variance on this one, which is interesting. I'm actually going to turn straight to the one that got the majority vote, which is option C. So could we engage the external counsel and a forensics firm before any customer notification? be curious to turn that to a discussion on the panel shortly. But my thoughts there is maybe will we have people come back to us, and Jerry might agree, and others who have dealt with this in the past. But if we make that notification, are they just going to come back and ask for the forensics report anyways in some shape or form? And also, we want the legal review to be done, so that's tight as well. Again, publicly traded entity, we might have to make that notification to the SEC. Part of that report is going to be public as well, and that's going to be scrutinized quite heavily as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to turn to then the second highest voted option as well. So option A, which is to issue a proactive customer notification within 24 hours, disclosing the breach, the scope, remediation steps, and also file that preliminary breach report with regulators as well. So that managed to garner up 8 votes. And then finally, we had 13% of the audience actually opted to do a 72-hour forensics investigation to, again, quantify the scope, notify some customers with some precise details, and a clear timeline for remediation as well. So some really interesting points. And interestingly for me as well, on this inject, and again, I'm just going to put these questions to the panel and see if anybody wants to discuss this. But what would be the reputational impact if customers found out 5 days later versus being told early with some incomplete info? Could that maybe could that delayed disclosure create any kind of insider trading concern? Could it cause disclosure violations? What do we think that looks like for us right now?
Can I temporarily? Sorry, go on. CISO.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I would say it's there's a perception and reality. There's kind of 2 ways to look at this. To your question, to your point, is if we waited the full 72 hours, do we look like we're hiding something, right? If we are at the 71 hours and 59 minutes, once the clock starts ticking and we finally notify, is there a perception? And there definitely is a perception that we may be hiding something, but we also. To an earlier point that was made, we want to have some good information. If this is impacting 3 or 4 customers versus the entirety of our customer base, we don't want to necessarily panic everybody. So I think there's kind of a middle ground that we're going to have to meet, because we want to be proactive and we want to be responsive to our customers and not get the perception that we're hiding stuff, but we also need something to really kind of pin this on and say, hey, we're working with vendors. This is a downstream thing. We're not going to cast a finger in anybody's direction, but at a minimum to say within the first maybe 12 to 24 hours, we're working on something. We'll let you know. One of the other considerations, we don't have it here, but if we have some roles like customer success or sales or something like that, and we know individual customers are impacted, it may be a good idea just to give them some information, some talking points. They own a lot of those relationships too. Those can be critical in something like this.
Can I temporarily play legal?
Go for it. Let's have a legal SOC analyst.
I'm going. Yeah.
So the other factor is, depending on, again, the nature of the business, the nature of the customers, the actual contracts between the client and us, some of them might have specific disclosure clauses there, and they may be less than the regulatory time periods. Yeah. So I think that might be something that also needs cross-referencing against the data that we believe to have been exfilled.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. There's been quite a laser focus right now on regulations and that 72-hour window. But again, do we have clauses and agreements with potentially some of our larger customers that we answer to as well to report something to them? Are they going to start reaching out already as well as they start to get a sniff of Drift being compromised? They might already start to see maybe the SalesSoft logo on the Drift website and go, hang on, our partner is actually a customer of these. We should probably reach out as well. So yeah, quite a fan of the hybrid legal SOC analyst role, definitely.
I'm just a DevOps guy. I just program stuff. Our customers are not just, but our customers are other, but it's B2B, right? Not
Mhm.
business to consumer, right? Because I think, um, so Michaela's right when it comes to the contracts, the contractual notification to partners. That's that has a very different public perception than when end users, people, random
Yes.
folks from home are trying to do their thing. That's very visible and that generates a lot of traffic on social media. But like businesses don't communicate that way, right?
Yeah.
So my take on this is in this situation, we are less vulnerable to the perception of moving too fast or too slow. And then we need to move more at the speed of contracts and regulation.
Yeah.
But if this was more, if we had customers that were just regular people doing their thing, then it has to be way more, I want to say way more visible, but the whole situation would be way more visible. If that makes sense.
I think we're going to start getting a lot of calls from our business customers
Yeah.
when the drift token gets revoked and all of a sudden our service that they're using is no longer working. They're going to call us wondering what's going on. Is there an outage? Is there something they need to be concerned about? So I don't think it's going to sit without having some answer, and we don't want to lie to them or be deceptive to them.
No.
That's the worst thing we could possibly do. So, I mean, I think regardless, we're likely going to have to share some of the share some disclosure or some sort of information sooner than anybody would like.
Jeff, could you proactively put up a little notice so when they actually log into the system that
I
they
like
get
the
the
way you
proactive?
think. I like the way you think. Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we could use one of those tokens in Salesforce to push that to prod, couldn't we, Jeff? And get the notes on the website.
Yeah, you could put a banner up on the website, and then of course, whatever regular notification we have with, email, in addition to all that. Yeah. Yes.
All right then. We're going to switch gears actually. We're going to go slightly more technical on this one.
Uh-oh.
And we're going to put our legal SOC analyst in the spotlight for a second because Michaela's been doing some really good work in the background. So, as most SOC analysts do, extremely curious, insatiably curious people, and always led by evidence, as you've seen by Michaela's tagline in the introduction. One more log would probably prove it okay. That's exactly what Michaela's done at this point. So, Mandiant published some guidance, as they usually do, and that guidance is normally, at least in my fair professional opinion, pretty good. Michaela's pulled that out of their website and started to do some digging. And the Mandiant guidance suggests that you should use a tool called TruffleHog, so a secret scanning tool, and export the same Salesforce objects or data that we believe the actor had stolen, and run TruffleHog across that data. And the reason being, again, to add some context to how this breach actually manifested in reality when this occurred with Drift themselves, is the actor stole all of those objects because they were cognizant of the fact that salespeople and other people who would use a CRM would store credentials, either secrets, tokens, access keys, VPN files, etc. They would store those in Salesforce. So if I was able to get access to those objects and then scan that data for credentials, could I then steal those tokens to facilitate lateral movement and increase in the blast radius? So Michaela's done some really good work here. She's emulated how the threat actually operated by extracting all Salesforce objects. And what she's actually found is we've got some VPN credentials that are stored. We've got RMM tool credentials that are stored for ConnectWise and Datto. Interestingly, there's two RMM tools in use here as well. So I can imagine some people's cogs are starting to spin there around concern. And then we've also got some long-lived AWS keys. So you'll see there where shortly it starts with AKIA, and that basically means a long-lived key as well. So quite a concern there around general hygiene as far as identity in the cloud goes as well. And Michaela's also been able to finally confirm that the keys were used for the S3 access, so a bit of correlation there with the CloudTrail logs. As you'll see here, we've got an export then from Michaela's terminal, where she's run TruffleHog, and we found our long-lived key actually matched the the Salesforce data that we export as well. So quite concerning. We're now at the stage where Drift has revoked that token. We've talked about what disclosure looks like and potential comms and all sorts of different things there. We've also discovered we've got a few different RMM tools in play as well, so there's an area of concern. And then finally as well, we've confirmed the keys that we used to steal that data was definitely in the Salesforce data as well. So things are starting to connect nicely into, well, a really bad story for the panel as well. Let's turn over then to the decision point discussion. So the question here for you guys is, should the team immediately rotate all of the discovered credentials or prioritize rotation based on confirmed exploitation? Some things to maybe consider here is we're going to have a lot of credentials in Salesforce. Obviously, if this has been happening for potentially years, obviously the Drift integration was in place for 18 months, but that hygiene risk might have been in place for again multiple years, and it's just gone undiscovered. So how are we going to prioritize all of this? And again, a final thing to consider is this is across different tools and technology. It might not be that straightforward. I'm not going to give you all the answers, but there isn't a right or wrong anyways. I'll open up the voting and I will turn to people in the panel if anybody wants to offer off mute and start us off with how you might go about this and what your concerns are right now for SalesSoft.
There isn't going to be a good way to frame this communication to anybody.
No.
No. This is a really bad day, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, this would definitely be a very bad day for us.
Can I escalate a request for external forensics? Because I'm not going to be able to look at all the other things that might be affected in terms of how wide this might have gone.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Michaela. So are you saying that we would get an external forensics firm in to let's say validate if these credentials are actually being used now to compromise the wider estate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did we find earlier that there was evidence that they had extracted some objects from Salesforce? So they may already have the encrypted and protected data.
Yeah, exactly that, Dan. And Michaela, through her very vigilant threat hunting work and following the Mandiant guidance, she's found that the long-lived AWS key, the same key that was used to steal the data from S3, was also found in Salesforce. So there's the concerning connection there.
If we're talking about potentially all the credentials, and we know in Salesforce and in AWS, we have a lot of credentials, including probably ones that were turned off and we have no idea, services we don't use anymore. There's a bazillion of them that either don't exist as we try to turn them off or revoke them, it's going to slow us down because we don't know we're doing it right.
Yeah.
My personal feeling is I would prioritize the ones that we know. And unfortunately, I think you have to go ask people because we don't apparently have documentation. But at least people should have a good idea on at least where to start by asking around and then work down the list. That's and then I guess we need to kind of know I have the feeling as well. Like if you ask me as the DevOps guy, I know there's credentials for things, but if you ask me what they do, I don't necessarily know because I was just asked to set them up. So if you ask me what's going to break, I don't really know.
Yep.
So that's a thing.
So it looks like we're
So just a question. Jeff, you said we don't have documentation, but sometimes the infrastructure team doesn't really talk to the apps team. So I'm just wondering if maybe they've got like a good CMDB to at least try and help track some of these and figure out, the answers to those questions.
I'm sure Bob has it in his notebook. We can go ask Bob.
Cool.
So
Bob hasn't retired yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So there'll be some of that, certainly. But there's no authoritative record of where we kept all that stuff.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Oh, wait, hang on. I just have one more thought. Sorry. However, in theory, though, because we know what the credentials are, we should be able to test them. Like we should be able to write a little
Yeah.
script that actually tests them to see if they at least come back with a successful login code. So we should be able to do that. That might take an hour or two to put together because it's a bunch of stuff and you need time and all that. So that's a thing as well.
But if we're slowly doing the credentials, the ones we know that have been compromised at a time, we're giving the bad guys an opportunity if they're already accessed other credentials that we haven't gotten to yet to kind of keep playing whack-a-mole as they're pulling stuff out of the system. We're going to be disrupting. I mean, at this point, probably the client's infrastructure, our client's infrastructure is already disrupted. Ours is not a major disruption yet, but it's going to be. So pulling the Band-Aid, will make for a lot more work, a lot more stress, and probably will nuke some stuff that shouldn't be nuked to start. But it's the only way to be sure that we've got everything cut out at this point. And it does look like a pretty dramatic message that we're going to have to deliver.
Yeah, we should also call out the fact that we know these are exposed credentials in, GitHub or not, so like in Git, like maybe our local GitHub or whatever. We need to make sure that at least in this initial round, those credentials don't necessarily go back there because they could just be leaked again. That's what I kind of think what you're getting at. We need to make sure that whatever new credentials are put into place are secure. Because if you just replace insecure with insecure, they might just get leaked again, right? That's what you're, I think, trying to say, right?
Part of it for sure.
Yeah.
Could I also, this is my SOC analyst hat. Cheryl, do you remember that AI pilot you authorized for me to play with? So I've got this really cool agent, and I think maybe that might speed all of this up for us.
Oh, are you asking me?
No, I'm not asking Gerard. He authorized my pilot, but that's obviously in a contained area. I'm just questioning, given the time point which Kyle mentioned, maybe we need to move at agent speed rather than human speed.
Oh, wow. That's put me on the spotlight right now. I would have to have a little bit more confidence in that tool set. So I generally don't like to try something brand new in an incident because that's just generally when things go really crazy. Like, I don't know, never could I imagine that an AI agent would delete a production database and the backup. That never happens, but it could. So, I'm going to say no right now, just because we haven't validated that that's going to work. And I don't want to try something live first time in an incident, but I'm happy if somebody else has any other thoughts.
I'm just going to call out cold offline backups. You got to have cold offline backups.
Oops. You needed that database? Yes, Claude, I needed that database.
All right, then. Some of the things to consider as well for me is when it comes to prioritization, we've already talked about this as well, is getting that resource to coordinate the change. We're effectively doing a scream test at this point of we don't know what this is going to break. So we're just going to have to find out by, rotating credentials and seeing who screams first. One of the devil's advocate questions I'd like to put out there as well, just to think about, is would regulators and also customers view a delayed rotation strategy as negligence once you knew the credentials were exposed? Like if we know that all of these credentials are exposed, delaying some of these could look bad on us as well. That might be my 2 cents there. But interestingly, the most voted for option was option B, to prioritize the rotation. So we're going to look at the AWS keys first. We've confirmed exploitation there, so that makes sense. Yeah. Then we're going to look at the VPN and then the RMM. And I don't know. I might turn to Jerry or others in the panel to see if they agree with this. But my thought process there is, well, AWS is definitely compromised. It's
Yep.
also production. It's where our PII is, where our IP is as well, potentially source code. Then we might want to do some rotation of credentials that come at the network layer as well, and then finally at the endpoint as well. But again, this is going to be hard work because
Mhm.
we still, once we've done that rotation, now need to check for footholds, right? So
Yeah.
this is not easy.
That's why we need the
So,
external team to help.
well, one of the considerations that factors into this when we're starting prioritization, obviously the impact is what we're really concerned about from that perspective. One of the things though I want to say is, uh, depending on your infrastructure and depending on your control set, RMM tools are fairly one of those. I would turn to my SOC analyst and say, get a rule in whether it's CrowdStrike, whatever EDR platform that says I just need a notification because we are going to be doing some work, but hey, is anybody spinning up an RMM tool in our environment? That's fairly straightforward. It's an executable. It's going to have to go off. It gets a little bit more difficult when you're talking about VPN connections and profiling them. We may have to go to a very defined set of geography or something like that. But there are compensating ways to do this where we have some sort of notification around that usage so that we can respond much faster. With balancing, it's the balancing act between getting back up and running in a secure environment, but also not breaking everything. As was indicated earlier, there's a lot of stuff that we don't have documented, and we start blowing up master production problems, interfere with backups, or can automated batch jobs. That's going to have a bigger impact, and then we're going to find ourselves not in a security incident, but an operational incident that we self-created.
Some really, really interesting points there. And Rob, yeah, discussion's definitely been great. So we'll turn over to the final inject then. And I don't want to say close this out because this is going to take a lot longer than, let's say, 4 injects and 1 hour to actually handle an incident like this. But we'll move on to the last part of the scenario. So we're moving along now in terms of time. It's 3:30 Eastern. The CISO has summoned everybody to an emergency board call. The CFO has actually drafted a preliminary SEC notification in case the incident requires any 8K filing. The CLO or Chief Legal Officer is also coordinating with some external counsel on state-by-state breach notification requirements. So again, maybe a bit more of a concern for our friends across the pond there in the US. And we've had our forensics team come back. So after all of the asking from Michaela to outsource this, it looks like we finally did. And the forensics firm have actually come back and said, well, approximately 50,000 customer records consisting of names, emails, addresses, account numbers, etc., have been exposed. So some areas of concern here definitely to discuss. What I'll do is I'll turn it over to an email just so you can have a brief read of that, and then we'll go to voting and discussion there as well. So you'll see here that we've got the email there from our CFO at SalesSoft, and they've actually mentioned that the external counsel has advised that the exfil of 50,000 records with PII likely does meet the threshold for a regulatory disclosure as well. And by 6 p.m. today, we actually need a customer notification timing and scope. We need an SEC filing decision and timeline, a public statement, if any. And then finally, we need an operational recovery plan, and in brackets, an OAuth token replacement as well. That's interesting to see the CFO kind of driving what that operation recovery plan is going to look like. And I'm going to leave Jeff to maybe have a think about what that looks like as well. But I'm going to turn across to the decision point, which is how should the company structure its customer notification and public disclosure plan to balance the transparency with the legal risk and operational recovery, because there's now a few moving parts to this as well. So I'll open up the voting so you can see the options. And the first option being to issue a transparent customer notification. We could send a brief customer notification acknowledging the drift compromise without disclosing the exact record counts and wait for the SEC Council guidance before making the public statement. We could delay all customer and public notifications until an external counsel actually completes that full legal review as well. There's a few different options there, but again, just consider for the panel. There's a few moving parts now. We've got DevOps and cloud who might start to think about eradication and recovery and what that plan looks like. We've got maybe our SOC analyst as well thinking about any other areas that we need to investigate and clarify, especially to drive the eradication efforts and clarify that we're not going to get reinfected from this as well. We might have our CISO concerned about what the long-term impact is going to be of this incident as well. But yeah, I'll turn over to our panel to discuss this one. I'll keep an eye on the votes.
So before the panel jumps in, I do just want to acknowledge that we are at time. So for people who are or need to leave, thank you again for coming. And if anybody on the panel needs to drop, obviously feel free to do so.
Yeah.
But if you can stay, let's finish the discussion and then we'll wrap.
So from the DevOps side, what I would recommend is in order to make sure that we build this the right way, air quotes, and it doesn't result in a reinitiation of the event, that the DevOps team builds a secrets management platform. So using whatever system, there's a bunch out there. We would deploy the credentials using either a configuration manager or a deployment tool, and there's a bazillion of those out there. So whatever folks on the team are already familiar with is what I would initially go for. And then we would have to locate where those creds exist in the code base, and you could use Truffle and other. I would actually make multiple runs. I would go ahead and use the same process that our legal SOC analysts used. And then we would run additional analysis using, so for example, that was Trufflehog. There's also Git leaks and so on. We would run all that analysis and even do it manually using grep and maybe even opening up files and search and find and whatnot. We have to move all of those instances into that platform, whatever it is, HashiCorp Vault, Azure Vault, AWS Vault, whatever. And then we'd have to make the corresponding code adjustments. So, I mean, 8 to 12 hours is probably on the light side, in fact.
Yeah, that's
right.
For 50,000 records.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean, we're just talking about changing those credentials, right? The most of the time is going to be involved with determining where the credentials are and then building that platform. And then at some point you should be able to pull the trigger and then just push everything out.
Yeah.
But that's the DevOps contribution.
From a customer's perspective, got to tell them something, but you certainly don't want to tell them that you were storing sensitive information inappropriately in an unprotected fashion. So the messaging that's got to go out to them has got to reassure them, be honest with them in terms of, yes, you were potentially exposed. Here's what we think was exposed of yours, and here's the plan to get it. But and we've got to be ready to do that. I'm sure in my vendor and supply chain hat, my phone has been dinging, pinging, ringing, and smoking nonstop since the news broke. And being careful with what we communicate back is going to help determine the long-term impact legally and customer-wise for the business.
And there's an interesting question there from Dylan in the live chat about regarding option B. Is that simply disclosing the drift breach but not disclosing our own breach, quote unquote? For me, the way that reads is that we'd be acknowledging our impact by the drift breach, but at this stage, obviously not going into too many details and hopefully waiting for the council, the SEC, to provide a bit more guidance on what they would require for a public statement. So maybe a bit of strategy going on there to stretch things out a little bit. I would suggest an option B. All right, then. I'll close voting up and let's sum up this last inject. So quite a strong lean towards option B there, interestingly. Just to remind ourselves, option one was to issue a fully transparent customer notification, offer a 30-day free security audit as well, which is quite an interesting one, especially thinking about our position in this as well. And then finally, option C, or one of the lesser popular options as well, is to delay all of those notifications until external counsel completes a full legal review. Prepare a detailed incident report for the board, but do not disclose to customers until that legal review is complete. And I would say, probably based on what the CFO and the CLO has just asked for in this inject, that might not be a very viable option right now. So we can see people went for mostly option B, which is to send that brief customer notification. Let's just acknowledge the drift compromise, say, yes, we're, somewhat involved in that. But we're actually going to wait for the SEC to come back to us and actually provide a bit more guidance on a formal notification. So yeah, just to wrap up then, thank you for dialing into this. I'll hand over to Rob just to sum up any final points.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. Thanks for facilitating this. That was great. Thanks to our panel for the awesome discussion. I think these third-party breaches are incredibly interesting. We saw the Vercel breach last week, and if you immediately blame the third-party vendor without looking internally, you're going to have some problems, right? Because ultimately here, we had a long-lived OAuth key. We had secrets stored where we shouldn't have, and that ended up causing a ton of issues for ourselves, even though the initial breach vector was related to some third party. So be careful who you blame. Be careful where your story starts. Yeah, thank you all for joining, for voting, for playing along, and keeping the comments active. We will see you next month, hopefully. And we will send out a follow-up email. Give us feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see next, or if you want to be a player on our panel here, shoot me a message. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Rob.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.